Narrator, 20 liters of gasoline per person, a ban on canisters and sales only with coupons. In occupied Crimea, there is a fuel collapse. At most gas stations on the peninsula, the scarce 92nd and 95th gasoline have simply disappeared, while at the remaining stations, kilometer-long lines have formed. The occupation authorities call these temporary measures, but the reality is much harsher. Due to successful attacks by Ukrainian drones, supplying fuel via the land bridge through Mariupol and Melitopol has become deadly dangerous. In addition, over the past 2 months, Russia has lost 20% of its diesel production due to strikes on oil refineries. Does the peninsula have any chance of breaking out of the blockade before the start of the tourist season? Watch the report by Alexander Muzhichuk.
Narrator. In Sevastopol, gasoline is now being sold with ration cards. In recent days, a limit of 20 liters of fuel per person has been imposed in Crimea. A ban on selling gasoline in canisters is also being introduced. But this doesn't solve the problem, because there is neither 95 nor 92 octane available in most of the peninsula. Translation from Russian for Ukrainians.
If the gasoline runs out, I'll park my car and walk. Ukrainian resident.
The situation with fuel, as you can see, is right behind me. Tourists, come with your cars. We'll be happy to welcome you. But what you'll drive back on, we don't know. Just come with your cars.
There are kilometer-long lines for fuel all over the peninsula. However, Crimeans say that standing in line is pointless. Unless you're one of the lucky owners of fuel coupons that businesses have bought for their own needs.
Ukrainian resident, 11 hours. There's no gasoline, not even a hint of it. At all. Everyone is waiting, driving by, looking, asking. The poor gas station attendant is tired of answering the same question to everyone. But there's no gasoline, there's nothing at all. So, dear friends, I've realized one thing. You need to have 3 cars in life. All right, 2. One that runs on gasoline, the other electric. Even better if you have a hybrid.
Diesel is running out too. Reuters reports that over the past 2 months, Russia has lost a fifth of its diesel fuel production due to Ukrainian strikes. Translation from Russian for Ukrainians.
According to Reuters calculations, oil refineries damaged by drones reduced diesel fuel production by 1 million tons in April and by another 600,000 tons in May.
This is happening before the start of the tourist season in Crimea, which Russian propaganda claims the peninsula is ready for. Russian translation for Ukrainians.
The situation with gasoline in Crimea. Come to Kerch, there's still gasoline left. Towards the southern coast of Crimea, there's still some left. If you're coming from Krasnoperekopsk, starting from Jankoy, there's no gasoline left. Neither 92 nor 95. Only diesel fuel, and at some gas stations, everything is completely out. So keep this in mind when traveling to Crimea. Although what is there to keep in mind? You won't have enough for the return trip. So for those who have trips planned, it's better to reconsider your plans, because you really could drive there and have to walk back.
The introduction of gasoline ration coupons in Crimea has become one of the largest such cases since the late Soviet Union. The Kremlin-appointed Gauleiters call this a temporary measure. They claim it is needed so that the authorities can replenish fuel supplies at gas stations. The so-called head of the region, Sergei Aksyonov, who 6 months ago promised not to allow a fuel shortage on the peninsula, is now begging Crimeans not to stock up on gasoline. However, no one is listening to him.
Translation from Russian. Ukrainian woman. I filled up my tank and now I'm driving around. If I suddenly find an opportunity to refuel somewhere, of course I will fill up just in case.
A list of gas stations where fuel is available has appeared on the website of the so-called Crimean Ministry of Fuel and Energy. It lists 148 gas stations across Crimea. At most of them, gasoline is sold with coupons. Translation.
From, right now my neighbor saved me by giving me 20 liters of gasoline so I could take care of my problems. Well, we hope and are waiting for our authorities to resolve this issue as soon as possible, because gasoline is needed and important. Announcer.
The fuel crisis in Crimea began after Ukrainian drone strikes restricted traffic on the land bridge to Crimea. The so-called pride of the Kremlin, the Novorossiya highway along the Sea of Azov, passing through regions occupied in 2022, was considered one of the main routes for supplying fuel to Crimea. Now, traveling along this land corridor from Rostov-on-Don, especially for the occupiers' military vehicles and fuel trucks, is extremely dangerous.
Ukrainian, it hit right here.
Narrator. Drones are also remotely mining the highway that connects Crimea with the Rostov region. Drones drop explosive devices onto the road, which are triggered when they detect movement. According to calculations by French analyst Clément Moulin, at least 1,500 trucks have been turned into scrap metal on the so-called Novorossiya highway. And these are only the cases he was able to verify. In reality, the number of destroyed vehicles could be several times higher. Crimean Gauleiters are strongly advising drivers to limit their trips and to choose this route only in cases of urgent necessity.
Ukrainian, look what the drone has done, damn, narrator.
According to the new rules set by the occupation authorities, convoys of vehicles must move mainly at night and during bad weather. Every third vehicle must be equipped with a UAV detector. The occupiers call the expansion of the Ukrainian kill zone onto the highway along the Sea of Azov an illusion of a blockade, while at the same time comparing it to the blockade of Leningrad. While Russian television shows nothing but victories, social media is increasingly filled with jokes about the safety of traveling through the occupied territories. Translation from Russian for Ukrainians.
Russians are asking what to take with them on the road to Crimea via the Novorossiya highway through Mariupol and Melitopol. Here's our answer. Take gasoline in canisters, body armor, a helmet, a fire extinguisher, a car electronic warfare system, anti-drone car attachments, and don't forget to write your will.
Gasoline is also transported to Crimea by ferries across the Kerch Strait, but the operation of the ferry depends on weather conditions. Since 2022, fuel has not been transported across the Crimean Bridge at all for security reasons. Alexander Mozhaychuk, Podrobnosti, Inter TV channel, Marathon, United News.
An air war of attrition and new challenges for air defense. Russia continues massive combined attacks with drones and missiles, searching for weak spots in our defenses. At the same time, the defense forces are striking back with increasing force. Ukrainian drones have targeted enemy oil depots, factories, and military airfields deep in the rear of the Russian Federation. Amid these successes, the Kremlin is once again resorting to its usual nuclear blackmail and testing the resilience of NATO countries' borders. How resilient is the Ukrainian sky? How do strikes on Russian oil refineries paralyze the occupiers' logistics? I'll ask Igor Romanenko about this, the former deputy chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine and founder of the Close the Sky of Ukraine Foundation. Mr. Igor, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you and to our viewers.
On the one hand, on May 30th, it became known, actually the day before it became known, that on May 30th, Germany delivered a new system to us, a new Iris-T launcher. The president spoke about this. And then, on the other hand, we also heard several official statements from Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov just last week, Chirk. And we have carefully seen the detailed analysis and assessments provided by the military expert Serhiy Bezkresnov, as well as the recent reports from the senior advisor to the Minister of Defense of Ukraine. He emphasized that our ability to shoot down ballistic missiles depends entirely on the pace at which our Western partners supply missiles for the Patriot systems. How do you assess the current resilience of Ukraine's air defense, especially in light of the anticipated large-scale strikes from Russia?
It's good that a launcher was delivered, but the system can fire even without it. But if we don't have enough missiles, we face problems specifically with the supply of anti-ballistic missiles. That is, this concerns the Patriot PAC-3 battery, the MS-1 missiles. So in this case, it's actually impossible to carry out the task. And that is precisely why, when it comes to dealing with various Russian aerodynamic targets, we certainly can and absolutely do have the necessary technical means to engage and destroy them. And we can do so quite effectively and reliably. Aerodynamic targets include aircraft, helicopters, cruise missiles, and unmanned aerial vehicles. But when it comes to ballistic missiles, well, Iskanders, for example, Kinzhal missiles and Zircons, such targets are destroyed only if there are anti-ballistic missiles available. As for Oreshnik, we do not have such a capability. In all of Europe, there is an anti-aircraft missile system. In Germany, for example, it is the Israeli Ru-3. So I think there are other developments underway here, both Ukrainian ones and joint projects with our allies. But this requires funding, time, and the appropriate work. Therefore, there are still problems when it comes to countering Russian ballistic missiles.
Mr. Ihor, according to intelligence data, Russia is capable of producing about 60 ballistic missiles per month. Is this resource sufficient, so to speak, to resume large-scale missile terror against cities, considering the current expenditure of the aggressor?
Well, if they redistribute or concentrate those missiles, as they do, for example, against Kyiv, then unfortunately that possibility does exist. That is, well, there are about 15 ballistic missiles, and if they use or allocate another 15, maybe 20 to other cities, we shoot down a portion, but some still reach their targets. And here we have a problem. As for the others, one way or another, they can be dealt with. Well, the F-16 and MiG-29 are quite effective against cruise missiles. And then there are various types of ground-based anti-aircraft systems that we have. We've seen the effectiveness even during massive attacks, 90 to 95%. Well, let's say 90. That's a pretty high figure by global standards. Let's say, as for ballistic missiles, we've discussed this. And here we're working both with Europe and with Middle Eastern countries, wherever these systems are located. And as is known, our proposals from the president are aimed at obtaining a license, but the previous administration did not agree to this. And as for the current Trump administration, there are still no decisions regarding this missile. There is a separate minor element. Poland was allowed to manufacture it, but that's not really significant. That is, Japan can work under license separately, but cannot transfer it directly either, though this is also progressing gradually. Japan is also making progress in terms of indirectly, if not directly, transferring the weapons Ukraine needs. Not all of them, but still. And work is underway wherever possible, with South Korea and a number of other countries as well.
Mr. Ihor, how do you assess the flip side, that is, the strikes by the defense forces on targets within Russian territory? For example, the attack on the Saratov oil refinery has led to rationing of A95 and A92 gasoline in temporarily occupied Crimea. There are now limits up to 20 liters per coupon. Also, the destruction of an Iskander complex and the damage to two Tu-142 aircraft in Taganrog. All of these are recent strikes. How effective do they seem to you?
Well, all the lines are distributed along which the strikes are carried out accordingly. You mentioned there are purely military targets. This is the top priority, first and foremost, because there is a large-scale war going on, and it must be understood that everything else is secondary. But of course, strikes deep into Russian territory do affect their war economy. And primarily, let's say, fuel and lubricants are affected since everything is interconnected, as well as companies that manufacture weapons factories, components for them, and chemical enterprises. These are usually explosives. All of this remains in effect. Well, the most significant factors are both informational work and moral psychological pressure, which are based precisely on the economic circumstances that are developing, which you have demonstrated, that is the lack of, let's say, and the limited distribution of gasoline and, in general, fuel and lubricants. Yes, and the approach related to the fact that with the implementation of these technologies in the South, logistical routes are being cut off with all the resulting consequences. And this prospect must definitely be further developed by the defense forces of Ukraine, because by and large, it is now technologically possible to do what was planned back in 2023 during the preparation and execution of the counteroffensive. But back then it didn't work out, whereas now, thanks to these technologies and the significant increase in our capabilities, which continues to this day, we are seeing results. We can see the consequences. The question is, how much more potential of this kind can be added to the capabilities of Ukraine's defense forces?
Mr. Ihor, thank you very much for your comment. Thank you for the time you've given us, and I wish you a peaceful day. Joining us in the studio was Igor Romanenko, founder of the charitable foundation Let's Close the Sky of Ukraine and former deputy chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to our viewers as well.